Hey guys, so first of all, yeah, thanks for coming. It's good to see you all. Yeah, my name is Momir. I've been with IOSG for a bit longer than 2 years. So I joined just before DeFi summer, and I was very much interested in DeFi. So I had I was fortunate enough to lead some of the DeFi research and investment for IOSG. Also, I'm very passionate about data analytics, so from that angle, I'm also very excited to discuss this topic today. When it comes to IOSG, I think Queenie already introduced a little bit. I'll just add a few sentences to that. As she mentioned, we started investing in this space in 2017. So we made few big bets on a couple layer ones like Polkadot and Near back then. But over the past 3 years, I would say we are mostly investing in Ethereum ecosystem, more broadly. So we invested in everything from DeFi, we being one of the early investors in 0x, 1inch Synthetics, UMA MakerDAO, and many other DeFi protocols. We've been exploring gaming space quite early. We invested in Illuvium and Big Time over there. Present also in the intersection of social and blockchain with the investment in Roll, with the investment in Project Galaxy, CyberConnect, investing in Ethereum native scaling solutions like Starknet, Arbitrum, Aztec, and obviously active in across the data stack. So I would say that IOSG is trying to back the founders that have a long-term vision in this space, and yeah, it's also very nice to see some of you here that are in it for a long run. We are geography agnostic. We have portfolio across the globe, although we have physical presence only in Asia. We are in this sense a truly global company. So we invested actually most of the portfolios in North America, but also have portfolio in Australia, Europe, obviously Asia, and even South America. We invested one amazing team, POTS. I think they're also somewhere around here. So yeah, I would say geography agnostic, founder friendly, long-term oriented fund, and that would be kind of introduction about IOSG. So about the topic today, right, Dataverse, so why data first, right? So I think that one of the key differences between Web 2 and Web 3 is the way we interact with data in Web 3, right? So in Web 2, we have these large corporations that control data for billions of people across the globe, and they have exclusive right to utilize this data, manage it, distribute, do whatever they want, right? Even sometimes they would use our data against us in a sense that they are building powerful algorithms that define the way we consume content, consume information, interact with each other. And these algorithms are often optimizing engagement, maximizing engagement, and also trying to maximize addiction of the users, which is not necessarily in the best interest of users. In Web 3, on the other hand, we have very transparent standards, right? Everybody is able to query and analyze blockchain data. Okay, so everybody is able to query and analyze blockchain data. This means that so there is no more exclusive right to it. So everybody can build on top of the data stack, and this by itself means that it opens up a lot of opportunities, right? Does it mean that now that data is available for everyone, does it mean that it is valueless? I don't think so, right? Even if you think in the most primitive form, about raw data, it still requires some level of technical sophistication, some investment into hardware to run the node, and obviously invest time that has opportunity cost, right? So even in this most primitive level, data has value, right? The more processing is performed on top of this data, the more valuable this data can become, right? So contextualizing this data is basically producing information that's valuable for many stakeholders in the industry. So it's valuable for us as investment fund to try to understand fundamental dynamics in the space. It's valuable for dev developers to assess whether they have product market fit or not. It's valuable for regulators, academia, right? And what I believe it's also going to be valuable for smart contracts in the future that will be more sensitive to the environment and trying to read more on-chain data. I will address this a bit more in the following slides. What else? Yeah, data in the Web3, it's also like our identity, right? Like whatever we do on chain, it's going to define who we are, like in this Web3 world. Like so, eventually, our access to certain communities, our access to certain products at like specific terms will be defined by like the data we generated on chain. I think another interesting concept in Web3 regarding data is this like concept of user ownership. The best way to illustrate this on a very concrete example, I would think, would be like social graphs, right? And we will talk about that also in one of the following slides. Just a second. Right, so over here we kind of map the data stack as we see it, like layer by layer. It looks like pretty solid is there. It looks pretty developed. Like already looks quite complex, but it's still relatively immature. I think like with the exponential growth. With the exponential growth of data generated like on-chain over the past 2 years, it became like a clear, like it was obvious to everyone that this is like a great opportunity that we have to like invest a lot in each layer of this data stack in order to sort of like create enough computing power, processing power, storage like room for like Web3 10 years from now, like, right? So. Right. So now a bit more specific, right? Like talking also about some of our portfolio companies. So here I would like to talk a bit more general at first, like about like on-chain data analytics and demand, like for this like information, right? So in 2020, before 2020 actually, like I think this was not that obvious because only in 2020 we had like a first killer use case for blockchain, like which is DeFi, and then we started having like a lot of on-chain activity. Before that, crypto analytics was mostly focused on miner data, centralized exchange data, and prices, right? But now we have like a whole ocean of data that we can dive in like and like get data to like a very like tiny level of granularity, right? So everything is over there on chain. In 2020, like with the DeFi summer, the total number of transactions on Ethereum like increased 45% compared to 2019. Then in 2021, we had like this multi-chain narrative, like and BNB chain was one of the like leading alternative layer ones at that time. So they had like 8,000% increase in the amount of transactions generated. Today, we have more than 100 chains. According to DeFi Llama, there is like more than 120 chains, like which are programmable and have some sort of ecosystem. So the space increased like complexity by the order like 10x, 100x, but we still didn't have like we still have a gap to fill in terms of like data analytics tool to enable us to process all this data. So I'm a big fan of Dune Analytics and also have quite some stars over there as a Dune wizard. But there are still like some limitations, right? They're one of the best platforms for data analytics, but they cover only 6 chains out of like 100 and something. There is still like no clear direct monetization incentive for the curators on top of Dune. So there are obviously indirect ones, like some people got their first job in crypto because of their Dune dashboards, right? Like their Dune portfolio. Some people are getting grants. It's also a lot about social status in the space, getting these stars and becoming like wizards and whatever. But there is no clear monetization in case that you create like generate data table that's being queried a lot, or like create like dashboard that is the most popular on the Dune website. You won't monetize on it, right? Then there is an issue that there is no API. So that also means that it is very hard for curators to spin off their own project, because like now whatever you want to do, you have to do it within the website. Like I cannot just call API, run the code, and like basically spin off my own project and try to build like business model on top of it, like and monetize myself, right? Like as long as there is no API, there would be like very high barrier of entry for curators to spin off their own independent projects, because otherwise you would have to build the whole tech stack yourself, run the nodes, process the data, transform it, and then query again. Finally, just a general comment about metrics in cryptosphere. Among broadly reported metrics, there is only, I believe, two, prices and TVL. And TVL is just nearly not enough to understand the protocol fundamentals and what's actually happening. It's often a misleading metric. So it's very hard for everybody to navigate the space when we also don't have a very broad reported metrics, right? So beginning of this year, being aware of these problems, we decided also to back one of the emerging data analytics platforms like Footprint Analytics after talking to them for more than 4 months. And they deliver, right? They already support 17 chains, full data access. They are working on pre-processing the table to enable it to be much easier to query for the end user. They are building tools to allow also curation for the people that don't have coding background. And they already have API support, right? So we just currently focus on NFTs only, but soon it will provide full access to the Footprint dashboard. So these are some of the reasons why we decided to back Footprint. Another area that I feel it's probably the most interesting one is how to make data composable. So at the moment, the trusted Web3 services centralized one, Web3 analytics platform are just not compatible with Web3 vision, right? In order to, even for some of the Web3 native solutions, there is no guarantee that the data that you are reading is actually tamper-proof. It happened to me a few times to read, let's say, again, the graph is amazing, but it happened to me a few times to read the data from some subgraph and find errors, right? There is no guarantee once you read the data that this would be accurate data, right? So in order, there are some prerequisites to have this composability. So the first thing is that it has to be built on the premise of trustless and tamper-proof, right? So it's a complex problem to solve, but I cannot just imagine smart contracts managing billions of dollars in their vaults, integrating some centralized API to be sensitive to the data that's happening, right? So I feel this is creating this tamper-proof data. I believe there is a clear demand, and I believe that this can lead to next generation dApps, because currently smart contracts are to some extent limited in terms of resources and what they can provide, right? There is no way to be sensitive to the on-chain environment and to react based on the data. And I think with this tamper-proof data, what we will see, a general trend that we will see is minimizing the human governance and maximizing the reliance on algorithm. And this would be possible only if tamper-proof data source exists. So in this area, we were fortunate enough to meet Space and Time. They are amazing company. They are working on this tamper-proof data, their first decentralized data warehouse and on-chain analytics. And they built something they define as proof of SQL. So it's a novel cryptographic primitive that sort of ensures that once you read the data, that this data is immutable and trustless. So this then opens up opportunity for smart contracts to read this data and not to add additional security assumptions because of reading this additional data. This was not possible before, right? Hive Network, right? Also one of our recent investments. I think problem statement here is similar in an extent that they're also trying to address the problem of not having a layer that validates the data, right? They're more focused on the storage solution, and they're part of a Aviv ecosystem. We are generally bullish on Aviv ecosystem and investor in Aviv token, and believe that this permanent storage narrative is that everybody is becoming increasingly aware about this permanent storage narrative. We think that Hive could become a go-to app for developers that want to store their data on top of Hive, right? they already have market recognition, working with several notable layer ones on helping them standardize, validate, and store their data. I think one interesting way to think about it is also, let's say in the future, if Ethereum community accepts this, adopts this like state expiry, right? Like to make it like more scalable and easy to run the nodes. So then they would have to do something with this like archive data, right? Like, and this would be very sensitive data that needs validation, and you also want to ensure that this data is available forever. So we think that Kive and Arviv are in great position to dominate this like storage narrative. Decentralized identity. So yeah, we mentioned at the beginning, like whatever, who we are in the Web3 space will be defined by the data we generate. Like, so in this area we invested in, like our first investment was Project Galaxy. It was I think like 18 months ago, something like that. So Project Galaxy was the first project that was issuing these like on-chain credentials, and now they are one of the most popular tools for other projects to engage with. Like they recently did Odyssey for Arbitrum, right? That was very successful in terms of like raising the interest, but obviously they had to pause it for some other reasons. We also have like many portfolio projects that use Project Galaxy, and the thing is the traction before and after using Project Galaxy, like the difference is just astonishing. So they're really one of the most popular tools when it comes to on-chain credentials. Another one, CyberConnect, they are building like this social graph, right? So this is, when we talk about user ownership, like we can think of CyberConnect. So what happens, right? Like in Web 2, I assume you all have like Twitter account, like everybody in crypto is on Twitter, right? And some of you might have like thousands of followers over there, which is kind of a network that you value. But at the end of the day, you are not the one controlling this network. Like you cannot just, because you disagree with Twitter policy or like you don't find the features interesting enough, you cannot just go to another platform because your network stays with the Twitter, right? So they control the network, it's not you. What Social Graph is doing is basically the goal is in Web3 first to create the network which is like on-chain, right? So you have this on-chain network that will stay there forever, right? And then applications are being on top of that, so it's not vice versa. And then what we will have over here, like potentially, like these Web3 social media companies that are much more sensitive to the user feedback, because at this time, like they are not the one controlling the network. Like they have to be very sensitive to the feedback, and they have to create like best products for the users. Their mode becomes much smaller, right? But the users get control over the data, and they get much more control and flexibility to move, right? Sismo, right? Like another DID project, but that is also combining it with privacy. So I believe also most of you have like multiple on-chain wallets, right? It's probably not just one that you're using. If you think about like decentralized identity becoming like a key part of like also the way you interact with communities and like use some DeFi protocols, the problem is that you have like fragmented data across like multiple wallets. With Sismo, actually, you can aggregate this data, and you can do it in a very private way. You can also access some of the token-gated communities without revealing or doxing like completely your financial history, right? You can just prove that you satisfy the terms without like revealing everything. After all, like we also all appreciate to have some privacy regarding like our personal financial history whatsoever, right? So I think that in general, tamper-proof data, decentralized identity, social graph, and privacy are some of the most interesting like innovations in the space that we have seen like over the past 18 months, and are yet to be sort of like utilized to the full extent over the period over the course of the next few years. So we were very fortunate to be able to back some of these companies, and we plan to be also very active during the bear market. So if you guys are working on a data-related project, feel free to hit us up. Like I'll be here for the rest of the afternoon, so feel free to come say hi. And with that, I would like to close this presentation and open up for another speaker. Yeah, thanks a lot.